Hi there, welcome back to Not Another Budget. I'm Nicole. This is Mr. Bowie, who is joining us for today's video. On this channel, I'm attempting to cash budget my way out of debt and fix several years of financial misbehaviour. And if that's something you're interested in following along with, please don't forget to stick around and check out the other content that I've created for you on this channel. Now, this is probably going to be at a really weird angle because Bowie is joining me because we're going to talk about my least favourite subject in the world. And unsurprisingly to anyone who is a budgeter in the budgeting community, it's debt. I hate it. I hate that I have it. I hate that I have to talk about it. It brings up all sorts of feelings like anxiety and like a fast beating heart and breathlessness and an increased speed. But it's really important that we do talk about this in the budgeting community. Your or my history with debt, different avenues that people have taken. And I think because he knows this is uncomfortable, he's joining me for as long as he needs to be there. So we're going to deal with the wonky angle, guys, and we're going to just delight in the luscious gorgeousness that is Mr. Bowie, who is going to be very much a comfort therapy animal right now, because it is time for a yearly debt update. This is part of my kind of 1 year on from starting this channel. My very first video was my debt confession, and it came about because I'd hit breaking point in August. I had some really long, hard conversations with my guarantor, who has the absolute patience of a saint and has been financially stepping in for me for 6-7 years now across things going on. It's an extended family member and they've just been there financially as my emergency every single time. They have guaranteed me so that I can rent, firstly, a house in a shared house, a room in a shared house, and then being able to have and secure my own property. And it got to the point where I had to, in 2017, 2018, that kind of crossover period, take out and look for a solution for my debt. Now I am going to talk about mental health, so relevant trigger warnings do apply, and just bear that in mind. And I'm hoping he is gonna settle on my hand. Okay, we will use the props with the cat as a resting point. So my mental health has completely plummeted, and this is down to my financial situation. I have referenced in the past that I have worked in a boom or bust industry, and that's fine if you have your financial ducks in a row, you have a certain degree of financial literacy, and you understand how your own behaviours can impact your money. Well, I didn't have any of those three, so I really shouldn't have been working in a boom or bust industry, which relies on a certain amount of financial literacy, having your ducks in a row and understanding your financial behaviours and how they impact your money. So I'd reached a point as well where I was not well enough to work full time. My debt had gotten to the point where I could not afford the minimum payments. I, at the time, was living at home with my parents and I was paying them a contribution towards rent and towards keep. That's very much a separate discussion as to whether you should or you shouldn't, but I was in my mid-20s at this point and I was at home with mum and dad paying them rent. I couldn't even afford to pay that. My mental health was at rock bottom. I made some decisions regarding whether I wanted to unalive myself or not. Clearly, the not happened because I'm here talking to you today, but it was a very rough, dark period. And a large amount of it was down to the fact that I could not see a way out at the end of the tunnel. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. I was completely and utterly fixated on trying to thrive in this career that I wanted. I was prepared to risk everything financially and had risked everything financially to maintain a lifestyle that I could not afford. And I have nothing to show for the debt that I'd accumulated at this time. So when it all imploded and my brain essentially went, I can't do this anymore, you can't do this anymore, there needs to be a solution. And I reached out and approached a charity called Christians Against Poverty. They operate in the UK. They may operate internationally, although I don't know about it. Anything that I do say from now onwards should not be construed as financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. This is just my debt story. At this time, I had about £7,500 worth of consumer debt. Some of this was payday loans, some of this was an old student overdraft from when I was a student, some of this was personal loans, some of this was credit cards. So it was a real mix of just different little bits of debt. There was no car finance and there was no mortgage or anything like that in there at all. So I approached Christians Against Poverty because I knew, having gone through a really, really difficult emotional time, that I was not really able to work in the industry at that point. At this time, I was working part-time in a local factory, just doing packing and picking and working a little bit in goods in. I was paid weekly, £200 a week. My parents were still requiring rent payments. Like I said, that's a separate discussion as to whether that should or shouldn't have been going on at the time, all things considered. That's not really the place to have this conversation in this video. But I was just doing whatever I could to get a little bit amount of money in, but all of my money was going out on rent to other people and then minimum payments, and I wasn't able to make the minimum payments. And at this time, Christians Against Poverty had been picked up by Martin Lewis of Money Saving Expert. Now, he in the UK is pretty much a financial guru. He's very, very trusted by a large majority of the British public when it comes to finances. He's very good at delivering information, and his website, Money Saving Expert, is something that you should go check out if you're looking, and his newsletter is really, really good. He'd started doing some work with Christians Against Poverty and had said that they stood out in terms of a debt helpline because they addressed financial behaviour. And financial behaviour was the problem for me, and still is to a certain extent, although it's not as bad as it was back then. So I set up a meeting. I had a local guy come out, and you do not have to be a faith practitioner of any faith at all. Thanks, Bowie. I'm going to have this back now. There we go. You do not have to have a faith. You do not need to be attending a church or religious institution. They are there just to help. And they very much took my hand and went through the steps with me. Because I had medical information that was obviously coinciding with things at the time that had been going on, very much backing up and supporting. This was not yet at a point where debt institutions were really implementing, or financial institutions were implementing mechanisms to support people with low mental health. That very much came in after. So I was just ahead of that. But they had this information that basically said that I'm not really fit to be working at a level that's going to pay and clear my debts. My financial situation is unlikely to change. At the same time, they did a little bit of generic work with me with regards to, you know, setting up a budget, making sure you have your income and expenditure down, but not really addressing financial triggers. And I didn't really understand what was going on. I just thought I was chronically bad with money. So after exploring a lot of options and they kind of taking over and speaking to my debtors, the solution came in, and the solution was a debt relief order. And it's really important that I tell you what this is, because this plays into my current debt timeline. Now, this information that I'm about to show you is taken from the charity Step Change. It's not a full breakdown of the pros and cons of a debt relief order. If you want to look into this, you need to go look into that yourself. This is just a very, very basic breakdown of what a debt relief order is. I told you I had props. So, a debt relief order is a way of cancelling or writing off your debts. This happens if your finances do not get better after 12 months. So this was the situation I was in. They'd been working with me at this point for about 10 months, and my finances were not going to improve at that time. I was still not well enough to be working in that way to basically improve my debts. It can only be administered by an approved intermediary. So we're talking Christians Against Poverty, National Debt Line, Step Change, an official charity that's there to help with your debt, that does not take fees and is not going to charge you, is not a third party intermediary that's going to administer an IVA or a bankruptcy that's going to charge you for a debt management plan. So they can only be administered by an approved intermediary. Though the list of approved intermediaries is available on Google. Interest and charges stop being applied, but if you go ahead and your debt is essentially written off or cancelled, which at this point was about £7,500, it stays on your credit file for 6 years, and it acts like, although it is not a bankruptcy, IVA or court county judgment, it acts like that. So it has that level of effect on your credit file. And it is only, to my knowledge, offered in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Scotland has a different equivalent plan. So that is a debt relief order. So let me take you to my timeline. I have props. So in November 2018, the debt relief order was registered and put in place, which therefore meant that my debt level at that time was 0. My credit score moved immediately to very, very poor, and I therefore had limited or no access to any form of credit. If you were to credit check me right now, everything would come back and go, do not lend, do not lend, do not lend. My affordability went down to nothing, and my therefore ability to pass a credit check for renting any property at all, be it in a shared house or private rental, anything like that, was a guarantor was required. At this point, the guarantor starts to kick into play because I had not really done anything to address my financial behaviour. I didn't know how to, I didn't know where to look, I didn't know what resources to look for. But at this point, my relationship with Christians Against Poverty came to an end because the debt relief order was in place. I was dispersed back into the public financial world and go off and live your life and build from here. So between November 2018 and June 2020, I re-entered the industry, started doing really, really, really well. Had started to kind of rise and earn at a level that I'd never earned before. And this is very much when like the boom or bust, earning 4 or 5 months worth of income at one go, down to one job comes into play. I was traveling really throughout the country, going down to London and doing work. I was still living in the shared room, but my income and expenditure had massively increased. And that really, really started, I would say, June 2019. So things really picked up in June 2019. So about 6 months after the debt relief order had put in place, I'd done a lot of work on my mental health to try and address that. I had a secure living situation. It was really, really good. Things were really, really good. I also had a full-time salaried job alongside that, and I was also fitting in filming and freelancing around that. So I was super busy, but I was running really, really well because I had no access to credit. But I wasn't spending all that well. I didn't keep the money in my account when I lent it, when I needed it to. When I was paying all of my bills, I was then spending an awful lot on my discretionary spending. So it meant that when my car broke and the things went slightly on the downside, my guarantor stepped in, bought my car. It was £1,500 at the time. So even though I was earning all of this money, I was not keeping up with bills. I was still spending like it was water. It was running through my fingers like it was water. I fell behind on rent arrears, and so they paid those off for me. This was when I was living in a shared house. I had also taken out a couple more credit cards because I was still, even though I had extremely limited or no access to credit, I could get kind of little things. So I would get a credit card at like a minimum level, make 4 or 5 months of regular payments, then the limit would increase, and then I would miss payments. I think looking back, that was purposeful. that knowledge that like, actually, well, I only need to be paying out this little bit each month, and then actually, do you know what, I don't need to carry on paying the minimums, and I've all of a sudden unlocked this massive access to credit. So also we had a pandemic, March 2020. I moved back in with my parents. I'd been living away from my local support area at that time, and I packed up the cat, and drove 3.5 hours when I really shouldn't have been, back to my parents. And at this point I was completely freelance. The job that I'd been working, which was a full-time role, was a fixed-term contract that had come to an end, and my calendar cleared up overnight. I've talked about this a little bit before, and I think actually in my first live I go into a lot more detail about my roles within the industry. But June 2020, there was an option to relocate closer to my parents. The rental market was trying to reopen back up, and the guarantor agreed to be my guarantor. I had started to pick up freelance work again. The film industry was one of the first to reopen after that first lockdown, and I had also at this time started to make and sell the face masks that were required, so I did really, really well off those. And I was also making bespoke and commission items, as well as ready to wear pieces. So between the business and the freelancing work that I was doing, I met the letting agent's affordability, but obviously the credit check was going to be a massive issue because of this little thing here. So the guarantor stepped in and agreed to guarantor. At this point, my debt level was £3,640. We get to September 2022, so just shy of 2 years. The industry jobs, some of them came and went. At this time, my behaviour with money, so this entire block period here, my behaviour with money is still not great at all. I'm not paying bills where I should be. I am taking out insurances, forgetting the payment dates. They then come along, the payments try to get taken and retaken twice. The money's not in the account when I need it to. I'm trying to float and create a business, so I'm spending heavily on stock and materials. I had an Etsy hold reserve put on place, which did not help at that time. A lot of my business was being sold through Etsy. I had freelance jobs that were paying late or not at all. So that melting pot of good income that wasn't always in my account when I needed it, plus my own inability to pay bills on time, spend money like it was water, try and fund a business that really I had no place trying to fund and grow. It should have just grown at its natural place rather than me ploughing money back into it, meant that by September 2022, my debt was £14,832.87. And that's when Not Another Budget was started. And that's my first video. You can go back and watch that debt confession. It's still on here. But in August 2022, my guarantor, after paying yet another month of rent, essentially said, my life circumstances are changing. I'm in a position where I no longer need to work, although I have enough of a financial float, but I'm not going to carry on paying for you anymore. Now, if all of a sudden the world starts to end for you and it's a major emergency, that's a different level, that's a different situation, but I'm not going to continue paying a rent for you anymore. I don't know and don't think I can be your guarantor going forward. So in June 2022, I secured a 2-year rent extension on my contract. So I am in this property until June 2024. So we're here at the minute. And I'd had another month where I'd gone in August. Well, all of the money was there on paper. Why didn't I have enough in the account to pay my rent? What on earth's going on? And it was around about this time when I'd started to discover UK budgeters like Rainbow Budgets, This is Liz and Les. There was also, I think she was around at this time, there was Scottish Highlander on a budget, although she wasn't known by that name. There was Budget with Ira, there was She's on a Budget, and there were the American budgeters. So Budget Girl, there was a couple of others, Pinching the Pennies, I think she was around, Budget with Kerry, although they're UK. So there were budgeting channels starting to emerge that I discovered, and I just started obsessively watching and just realised everything you now need to change. This is ridiculous. I'd only just been able to pay my council tax. That was down to its final warning. So I'd also had to pay a large amount of council tax in one go because I'd let it get to the last possible point. And I just went, I was also off sick. I was off long-term sick because I had a real massive issue with my lungs. So I was working 2 part-time jobs and taking on freelance work at this time. So I had on paper a good amount of money coming in prior to this, but I'd made myself sick because of the amount of work that I was trying to do. And I was down to statutory sick pay, which is just nothing in the UK. So September 2022 was when I was like, August was the boiling point, the crunch point, and September 2022, I sat down and filmed my debt confession. And that was my level of debt. And now we are here. I'm going to say we're here at September because it's like 5 days away for me. So we're not far. There are some things that we need to bear in mind before I tell you my current updated debt total. My access to credit, as we can see running along here, is still extremely limited until November 2024 when it ends. However, in June 2024, my current house contract ends. Now, at the minute, my rent is $850. It's my largest single expense, and it is a push to cover by myself with all of my other bills. So I will have to make a decision in June 2024 about what I'm going to do. Now, bearing in mind, I'm still in this period where I have no realistic access to affordability or credit. With the current UK housing market being what it is, if this property goes up for rent, the rent rate increases, that's going to be a problem for me. Let's just be realistic. I'm going to over leverage myself too much. So I probably really wouldn't be able to keep on the property that I'm in now. I'm unlikely to pass a credit check and therefore affordability check for another property in another location. This is without a guarantor or with a guarantor. And the current rental market being what it is means that I'm a highly undesirable candidate for a rental property in the UK. If I can persuade my guarantor to let with me for another year, that will cover the debt relief order ending and my credit score cleaning up to the point where actually I shouldn't need them beyond June 2025. But that's the real major unknown. But that's where we are. That's my debt timeline. That's where we've got to for now. My current debts. Things have gotten a bit interesting. So my whole goal when I started this channel was to address my financial behaviour, get to grips with doing a budget, get to grips with paying my bills, establish what my priorities were, because I think at one point within my debt history I had something like 13 subscriptions each month. And if you'd asked me then, I would have been utterly convinced that every single one of them was absolutely necessary to my well-being and my quality of life. I was paying for weekly chiropractor visits when I didn't really need them weekly. I just convinced myself that I did. And I then had to really go through and be like, okay, am I paying a realistic amount for this bill? Am I paying a realistic amount for here? What do I need as my budget spending categories? So that's really what this past year has been about. It's been putting basic budgeting foundations in place because guess what? I had none. That was always fun. That's half the problem. That's why I'm in this position now. But it's meant that paying off debt has not been my biggest priority. And I've been quite open about that. But going forward, I've not had real major debt minimums put in place. And I need to acknowledge the fact that if I don't have savings behind me, because of the current credit situation, let's just go back to this. I can't use a credit card in an emergency. I can't apply for a loan in an emergency. I can't put a car on hire purchase in an emergency if my car breaks. If my phone breaks, I cannot get a contract above X amount, which means that I am limited. I'm not someone that needs fancy flash technology, but if a plan is not out there that I'm approved for, it's a problem. I can't afford certain things. There are certain things that people would just put on buy now, pay later. I don't qualify for any of those. That's not saying that increasing my debt is good or bad, but it means if there's a problem, I literally will just only have savings to rely on. And I need to take into account the fact that there's a 6-month window here where my credit file is still going to be really, really sticky. and I need to figure out what I'm doing with the house. So I need savings behind me, and that is really the priority for this next year going onwards. But I also am now feeling like it's an obsessive itch. It's a gnawing ache. I really want to start reducing this. I want to get some of this cleared up. So I went through and I pulled every letter that I could possibly find from any debtor, and I have listed it down here. Now, back in December of 2022, I went through and did kind of a middle debt update. Some of the accounts had just dropped off and they'd been in existence for so long, they'd just disappeared. Some of them I couldn't get hold of, but listed down as a debt anyway. Some of them were going to pause interest for a little bit amount of time. Some of them were going to have minimums in place or not prepared to accept a minimum. Some of them were going to have settlement offers. That was all based on the fact that I would be in a job taking home £2,000 a month regular income, and I lost that job in February. So they then became survive, not pay off debt. So I have redone that list. Now, can I zoom you in, or can you all see? You should be able to see. Now, with a lot of these, they have either had interest added, so the balance has gone up. They have moved and split. Some payments have gone to one debtor, some payments have gone to another. I have no idea if they can do that or not. Some I've been paying regularly on, like my guarantor. So although that balance has gone down, others have increased. So this is where we are. I have some of these are abbreviated. So I've listed them smallest to largest. If I have been able to contact them, because it's been a really busy week trying to do, like when I've alluded to the fact that I've had so much admin to do this past week, it's because I've been on the phone trying to get an updated balance, see if they'll accept a minimum payment. Is the debt even still with that person anymore? Can I actually speak to a human? Because all I have is an email address. I don't have a phone number. Trying to track down if that company still exists, which is why there is not debt minimum set up for all of these. But where I have been able to set up a debt minimum and get an updated balance, I have put that down. So the first up is cars. This is a debt of £20. Next up is Credit Spring. They have said that they can accept an early part payoff. So I can pay a chunk of it off in one go outside of the credit minimum. Otherwise, they want to see the original credit minimum still kept to. It's quite confusing, but the original debt of £140, they have said I can pay off 30 in one go and then carry on making minimums off the remaining 110 down here. Close Brothers is £38.06. There's another separate cars account, which is a debt of £70.36 and a minimum payment of £15. Admiral is £83.76. Again, trying to find a human to speak to about this, quite difficult. Close Brothers, again, separate account, £90.95. Canford Law, good luck trying to get hold of these guys. £108.06. And then we have Credit Spring, and that is a balance of £110 with a £10 minimum payment. The overall balance, as I've said, is £140, but if I want to, I can make an early chunk payment of £30. And basically then this would be paid off in 11 months rather than not. This one I have question marked because when I went to the online account to look at setting up a minimum payment, it said that it was closed and paid. I have not paid the £129.13 balance. So if this has moved, I am waiting to find out who it has moved to. If it has in fact been closed or paid, I am waiting for confirmation, but I could not get anywhere really with this one. Resolve Call is £149.85. AutoNet is £160.72. Admiral, separate account, £176.05. AJJB Law, that's a mouthful, is £179.85, and that's on a £17 minimum monthly payment. DRS is £191.05. This is One Call Debt Recovery, but OCDR is £203.75. That's on a £10 minimum payment. Arvato is £222.74. There's no minimum payment set up on that one yet. Lantern is £300.05. There are 3 payments of £79.81 and 1 payment of £50.62, and they were not prepared to accept a cheaper offering. Overdale's is £1,330.33. The first payment is £10.33, then it's £40 a month. My guarantor debt is currently at £7,560, with the minimum payment being £100. My total debt is £11,154.71. At the minute, my minimum debt payments per month are £271.81. So that's going to be coming out of my budget each month as a standard. The accounts that I would like to try and pay extra on are my guarantor, because that is such a large amount of money to one single entity. Add in the fact that it's someone I don't know personally, so there is a personal element on there. It's not a nameless, faceless company that I deal with via email or an online portal or occasionally a telephone, and I really am not good at calling. I can't do the calling and speaking to a person. It's those feelings of panic and the desperation around it that kicks in. I need the nameless, faceless debt portal. But I don't have that with this. So there is a real emotional element attached to this debt. And also, if we're being calculating about it, let's be real, I need this person ideally to guarantor me for another year. My hope is that actually I have kept up minimums during this period of financial instability, even if it was only £100. I have knocked down that debt. And I only really started paying them in December, so there was no movement on that until then. So even during this period of financial instability, I've paid at least £100 a month to them. I would like to pay £300 a month to them just to kind of clear that. It's my largest debt, so it's going to be my largest payment. Lantern is going to be cleared up by December 23. Overdale's, we're looking at a significant amount of time, again, to clear that one off. That's a period of multiple months. One call debt recovery, again, that is just the minimum. AJGB law, we're looking at 11 months for this one. There will be a smaller final payment of £9.85 at the end. Credit Spring, again, we're looking at 11 months. And cars, we are looking at, if my maths is correct, 5 months for this one. The smaller ones of £20 and £30 and £38, what I'll probably do is just make an extra debt payment to clear those off in either September or October. September is obviously going to be very focused on restocking and saving, getting kind of Christmas, birthdays, and some replacement items out of the way. But there are obviously a large number of debts, I should say, that don't have minimums. Now, some of them is going to require far more admin from me than I have been able to give time to. I do acknowledge that. I don't at the minute have a whole day to try and track down the likes of Canford Law and to get on the phone to Admiral and find out what charges have been. I know charges have been added to this, but charges have been added to a lot of these. And some of them I've just put back in because I've had no communication from them. I've had no communication from Resolve Call at all past 2021. The same for AutoNet. Some of them have moved. So if they've moved beyond my initial who I think I owe money to, there's still a lot more admin that I need to do. I just quite frankly haven't had the time. Just sorting out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 took all day. Genuinely took a 9-hour day. Each one you're having to go through an affordability assessment. Each one you're able to say to them, look, here's my current situation. I can only offer you £10 a month. Some of them, they were not having it. And like this Lantern debt has been with me since 2019, 2020. So they've been with me for a while and they're very much on like their last leg. I don't really want this to go to a CCJ or further action. I'm trying to clean up that credit file. I've got 18 months left, near enough, before that happens. I don't want another 6-year impact to go on there. So although tackling my debts is not my immediate priority for this financial year, that is only because I need to give myself a chunk of savings to deal with this bad boy. This is the looming monster at the end of the tunnel that I can't account for. I cannot call at all what my landlord is going to do. He may have been very, very happy with me as a tenant. He may love the security of having a guarantor that has actually paid out and acted. He's had a tenant in me who would have been in there for 4 years at this point, who has maintained the property, who has looked after things. He may equally go, well, I'm already charging you below market value and I need to now increase what I owe you, what you owe me in rent, and that's going to put me in a position which I can't do. I do not want to over leverage my monthly income and have over 50% of it going to debt, which is what it would going to rent, which is what it would look like. So there's this big looming monster that I've got to deal with. I've got to get some good cash reserves behind me. We've talked about my savings goals a little bit. Those videos are out on my channel. You go find them somewhere. I've got to deal with this really big looming monster and get some cash reserves behind me to deal with that. I need to get an emergency fund in place because a lot of my guarantor has covered an emergency. That's where I've owed them. And I need to make sure that I'm covering areas which have previously impacted and increased my monthly budget. However, in doing so and making this affordable as part of my standard £2,000 a month income, I know that I can cover all of my bills, I can cover my debt minimums, and therefore savings, and therefore any extra that I do earn through Vinted or surveys or cashback or anything like that, I can then divvy out and go, okay, right, I'm going to put 50% towards savings and I'm going to put 50% towards a debt payment. Some of them I may get really, really frustrated by and just pay off in one go, the likes of these smaller ones here. And you know what? I might even pay Lenten in one go. We'll see what I can do in September or October, and then roll those into those larger monthly payments into other ones. We'll see. If I am going to structure a debt snowball, it's going to look very, very different because I don't have minimums set up on all of these. And the ones that I have had regular communication from, that I can track down, that I can deal with, that I can speak to, are the ones that I want to just get dealt with and off, because the ones that I've not heard from in 2 years, and some of them I have not heard from in 2 years, guys, I need to establish where they are and what's going on with them. And obviously really chunking down that guarantor payment. To put it in perspective, if I can pay the guarantor £300 a month, in 10 months that is £3,000 paid off this. In 12 months, that's this debt reduced by half. So where I've been saying that I've kind of needed to, I think I'm going to need a secondary form of income, it's because I want to make headway-ish on my debt. I cannot do it aggressively. I cannot throw all of my extra income and my bulk amount that I'm getting in 3 times a year to debt. I need to make sure that I've got a savings reserve because my credit file does not give me a cushion to respond to life circumstances. Quite frankly, it means that I'm not increasing my debt, and it means that in a year my debt has gone down quite passively. Some of those are from debts dropping off and being written off. Some of those are where I owed electricity and water arrears and things, and they're now part of my monthly payments. And some of those are where actually I have been paying off the minimums, but actually charges and others have applied. And some, like the AutoNet and the Admiral and the Resolve Call, I have put back into the budget because I have documentation from them and I can't get hold of a human to find out if it's still there or not. So thank you for sitting through this really, really long debt video. There was going to be no short way of doing this, so thank you for sticking with me. And if you have made it all this way, thank you so much. I completely 100% accept that the way I have done things and the way I am doing things is not what other people would do. But that is why personal finance is personal. If I knew that I had a credit file and affordability that would permit me to draw down £1,000, for example, to cover an emergency, and then incorporate it into a debt payment plan or pay it off quickly, that would completely change what I'm doing here. But I don't have that. So my reserves and my security need to come from the cash that I'm earning. Once that's in place, I can then start to tackle my debt. It's a bit of a Dave Ramsey kind of 7 baby steps. Get your £1,000 emergency fund in place and then deal with your debt. Except my £1,000 emergency fund would look slightly different to others. I would have, say, £500 in emergency and then a couple of other sinking fund pots as well. But this is where I am. I'm not going to say whether I feel happy or not about reducing my debt, because I'm not happy to have it at all. And I have given myself a really, really small window, because ideally by November 2024, when the debt relief order drops off, I want this gone as well, because then I'm going to be really smooth sailing. But the difference is this time round, I will hopefully have all of the tools in place and the behaviour change to help. Once again, this is not financial advice. The decisions and the actions that I've taken should not be construed as financial advice. If you want to do some research into debt relief orders, please go ahead and do that. I will not tell you either way whether it was good, bad, you should do, you shouldn't do. I'm not a debt advisor. There are those who can give you far better financial advice. If you want to understand some of the terms that I have looked into, Debt Camel, who is a viewer of many people's videos, is also on Instagram and has an excellent web page. Please go check her out. Martin Lewis at Money Saving Expert, please go check him out, and his forumites are fantastic. And he also runs the Money and Mental Health Institute as well, and has been doing an awful lot of research into and implementing an awful lot of policy that can help people who have poor mental health with their money. In terms of UK-based charities, there is Step Change, there is the National Debt Line, and there is Christians Against Poverty. All three of those can help you with your debt. In terms of international debt charities, I'm afraid I don't have a lot of information about those, but please go check out and see what is local to you. If you're in the position where your mental health is affected by your debt, please go and seek help. And if your mental health is getting you to the point where actually you cannot cope and it is impacted by your debt, please go and immediately seek support from charities like Samaritans and others out there. Your debt is not worth you not being on this earth. It's not worth it. It's just money. And your life is worth more than money. So please go seek help. Thank you so much for watching this video and for sticking with me and supporting Not Another Budget. It's a really, really long one, so I've had a coffee sitting here this whole time that I've just gone, I'm just going to need to speak and get this out. So thank you for watching. If you've made it all the way through to the end, please put a little purple love heart in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. If anyone has any recommendations of charities that I have not thought of, please do put them in there as well, because there may be someone who's watching this video who may seek and find that supporting. If you are in need of mental health support to do with your money, as I have said, please reach out and make sure you get on that immediately. Once you have sorted your mental health and you're in a position to manage it, you will be able to manage your money. I can promise you that, having been through that process and I'm going through that process. It does get easier. Please just address your mental health if you need to. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in a couple of days' time. I'm going to love you and leave you now. And yeah, bye-bye for now.